Welcome back again to our Global Space Exploration Conference, GLEX 2021, and to our first plenary of today. This plenary has been organized and coordinated by OHB, and it is titled Going Forward to the Moon, New Roads to Lunar Exploration. For this session, I would like to alert you that you can again engage in the discussions by using our Slido system, where you can ask questions and rate the questions. So we have really an interactive panel. The panel will feature on-site and remote speakers, and it is moderated by Alain Boris, Senior Vice President for Business Development and Political Affairs at OHB. Please, Alain.
Thank you, Christian. So I am happy to chair this panel of distinguished speakers. In the 60s, 70s, there was a lot of excitement about the moon, and it was justified, of course. But this excitement eventually has fallen afterwards, as if we were forgetting our natural satellite, but it's still there. And when I joined OHB in 2006, I was impressed by the enthusiasm of OHB's founder, Manfred Fuchs, about the moon. He was convinced of the relevance of the moon for space exploration. He was certainly a precursor. We now see how attractive the moon is for several nations and companies. And the 2020s seem to be the decade of the moon. Hopefully, it may even be the decade when we will see the first woman stepping on the regolith. But also we witness a variety of missions with new technologies, new partnerships, and even new business models, including commercial missions. So this is the purpose of this panel, to identify and highlight these trends and to explain why moon has become relevant again. So I want to thank in advance the panelists today, and I will introduce them just in alphabetical order. So Kyle Asierno is the CEO of iSpace Technologies in the US. Salem Al-Mari, Assistant Director General for Science and Technology from the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center in the United Arab Emirates. Lutz Bertling, who is speaking remotely from Germany, member of the Executive Board of OHB SE, Chief Strategy Development and Digital Officer. Vincenzo Giorgio, President Institutional Marketing and Sales in Alessia Space Italy. Sergei Krikalev, Executive Director for Piloted Spaceflight in Roscosmos, Russia. And Andreas Lindenthal, Head of Business Operations, Space Systems in Airbus, Germany. So I will try also that to make sure that you have time for questions, so don't hesitate to prepare them. So now I will ask a first question to all panelists on their lunar exploration programs. So if you could, each of you, in just a couple of minutes, share with all of us your lunar exploration ambitions and plans ahead. So Enzo.
Okay, thank you very much, Alain, and thanks for organizing this panel. As it was said, I'm working with Alessia Space, and actually we have based our activity, and we are basing our activities on plus than 30 years experience on low Earth orbit exploration, starting with ISS shuttle, and everything has been done there. And thanks also to agency investment, including the Italian Space Agency. Where we are moving now is basically on 3 axes. The first one is the traditional European Space Agency's axis, where we've been assigned the task of prime contractor of the International Habitation Module of the ESPRI, together with OHB. Then we are actually moving in a sort of more commercial way through the selection of the HALO program that we are doing for the space station, for the Gateway, and this will be through a US prime, Northrop Grumman. The third axis is based on a bilateral asset between Italy and the United States, and in particular, Italy assigned the Artemis Accord, and we are targeting a number of subjects there. Looking at kind of product that we are now targeting, of course, the gateway, meaning the orbiting platform, and I said what we are doing at the moment. Alloy is in a production phase, and International Habitat is actually being designed. We are targeting surface operation, and in particular mobility, and the ESA program EL3. We are one of the prime studying today the EL3 program, the Large Lunar Lander. And we are looking as well to services, because this will become a necessary asset, and we are studying the communication and navigation asset around the moon. Thank you.
Thank you, Enzo. Salem.
Thank you very much. Yes, in the UAE in general, and at the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center specifically, I think we're quite excited about, I would say, space exploration, but also specifically looking at the moon. We do have a very long-term plan of space exploration that really kicked off with our probe to Mars, and a lot of people were asking us at the time, why are you going to Mars and basically jumping over the moon? And our question is, yes, our answer is we've got to Mars, but we are definitely, we have a very keen sense and a strong eye looking at the moon. And after the success of the Mars probe, we have kicked off our latest project, which is a small rover called the Rashid rover, named after the previous ruler of Dubai, that will be exploring the lunar surface. So this will be basically the first object from that region to land on another celestial body. And it has some keen scientific objectives to study the lunar surface, to take obviously some thermal and some different types of readings from the lunar surface. Our objective there is to send our first rover by next year, and then to build a second rover with more scientific instruments and launch it by 2024, 2025. We are cooperating internationally on this project for the lander aspect and also for some scientific instruments. This for us is really the first step. So we are looking at robotic exploration of the moon. We are looking at potentially sending orbiters around the moon as we did with Mars. And then we do have an eye on human exploration of the moon in partnership with different players. Thank you.
Thank you, Salem. So, Andreas, your floor.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me here on this panel. And my personal thanks as an IAF Vice President in charge for the Global Network Forum, that all of you in the audience, you are here. You made it happening, that we have a wonderful Congress here. Thanks for that. And so for Airbus, our vision for Europe on the moon is in an international context, the establishment of a self-sustaining lunar ecosystem for the benefit of our society at large. So what does it mean? So for Europe, for European industry, and a contribution in an international scale means, first of all, being able to get there, to get to the moon, and to have, let's say, a permanent transfer capability for Europe, also in an international context, again, to have all the key technologies available. So second, being able to live off our home planet, which means having the capability, the resources for operate a station within a 2 weeks lunar night to produce and store energy resources to have autonomous operations and decision-making capabilities. Airbus has developed here with a couple of partners, Roxy, which is a technology to extract oxygen from the lunar regolith. You might have heard about that. So those and other technologies are key for this activity. And third, massive bandwidth. What we need in order to support the human and non-human activities on the moon means we have to have connectivity and huge bandwidth for scientists, of course, but even more importantly, for the operations activities, resource production, logistics, etc. And this is something where ESA and the international partners have already started relevant developments, and that certainly needs to be pursued and intensified in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Andreas. I pass the floor to Kyle.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the IAF for hosting this and OHB for asking me to be here today. So I want to briefly explain to you our first mission to the moon. iSpace is very lucky to be working with a number of international companies and partners from around the world for our first mission. This mission is the first privately financed mission to another planetary body. We raised $130 million in 2017 to start to build this lander. And this lander is called Hakuto-R. Hakuto means white rabbit in Japanese. And it is a mission that will go to the Lake of Dreams, scheduled for next summer, 2022. And for this mission, you can see we have 4 partners that will join us. As mentioned earlier today, the UAE and the Rashid rover will be joining us for our first mission. Along with them is JAXA. They are cooperating with a toy company who's developed a small cylinder toy rover, which will deploy from our lander. In addition, we have a private company called NGK, which will submit a solid-state battery. And then from the Canadian Space Agency, there are 3 funded programs: Mission Control Space Services, Canadensis, and then NGK, which will be flying on our mission. So I'm very proud to say that this mission is completely full. We have a full manifest, and we are very excited to work with our international partners, not just in the space community, but if you look really closely on the lander itself, you can see that we have a number of partners from commercial companies. And this was very important to us to build a bridge between the space community and the non-space community. So for example, you can see we are partnered with a company like Suzuki, who is helping us to develop our landing system. We're partnered with Japanese airlines and with an insurance company. So as we grow as a sector, it's going to be very important to us to continue to bring in non-space companies. And I'm very happy that for this first mission, we have been able to do that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kyle, and we wish you a successful landing next year. So, Sergey, you have the floor.
In Russia, we have a long-lasting discussion. Should we study moon by automated vehicles, or do we need to send people? And finally, I think decision is made that we shouldn't oppose human and robotic exploration. It should complement each other, and on initial state, we are planning to send automatic missions. What we know from our scientists who is studying moon by all accessible means, they said that our knowledge about moon now and 10 years ago is completely different. So we have new knowledge, we have new data, and probably to make decision how we are going to explore moon, how we are going to use moon, is going to be done a little later. But at this point, Russia is planning to send 3 automated landers that will study moon in automated mode, and then Russia is working on human delivery capability. We are building new generation spacecraft that is going to be able to fly beyond low Earth orbit, fly to moon vicinity, and also in development we develop systems that allow human to land on the moon, and in future we are planning to build base on the moon. But of course, moon is not final destination. All this technology is developed to learn how to fly and to be able to fly further beyond moon-Earth system.
Thanks, Sergei. So I pass the floor to Lutz from Bremen remotely.
Yes, thank you, Alain. I'm feeling a bit alone being the only one remotely on this panel. So good morning to everybody, and may I get my slide, please, in the background? Yeah, perfect. So exploration to Moon and Mars is obviously globally in the focus of all major space agencies. We heard a lot about it yesterday, today again from UAE and Russia. And as an intermediate step to crewed Mars missions, we all know that NASA will send astronauts within this decade again to the lunar surface. The Artemis base camp will set the path for sustainable activities in the future. So within the decades to come, clearly from my point of view, and then as said by Andreas already, a lunar ecospace can be expected to be developed. The moon has always been in the focus of OHB, and particularly our founder, as Alain said earlier, Manfred Fuchs. He had a special devotion to the moon, and in fact, OHB was the first company to ever send a fully privately funded mission to the moon orbit, not on the moon, the so-called M4 mission. Today, OHB has key roles in institutional programs like the Gateway or the European Logistic Lander EL3, on payload developments. For the Gateway, for example, together with our friends from TAS, we are responsible for the refueling system for the SP module. In EL3, again, we are a core team partner with TAS Italy as a prime for the AB1 study. And in payload developments, we're doing scientific experiments for ISRO, technology like drilling, like robotics, and so on. But even more importantly, we intend to pioneer in Europe the development of a commercial lunar surface access service, or in short, LSAS. The Lunar Lander Service LSAS is intended to offer flights to the surface of the moon from 2024. The interest for payload slots is already significant, and we are all very, very excited about this project. And the demand is really there, and I'm certainly expecting that the demand for access to the lunar surface will grow significantly over the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Lutz. So I will go on with a question for all of you. You have all very different ambitions and approaches, but there is a commercialization trend that certainly plays a role in all of your programs. And the customer pool is starting to widen. So the question, let's start direct, is should agencies remain your main customer with needed commitment to build sounding models and be able to approach other investors? What investors are you looking for? And based on your own experiences, is there a commercial demand to cover, or is science the main objective of going back to moon? So I think we can follow the same order. Enzo.
Okay, thanks for being the first. Okay, the main question is agencies. What role should they play in this new way of doing space? The answer is definitely yes. I think that whenever we approach new orbit, new planet, we need the agency. We need the agency for a couple of reasons. The first one is that agency is the only entities that can, together, they can develop a sort of let's say, multinational strategies. Nobody can do a lot of things alone. We have to be together. We need agencies to cooperate with each other, and that's exactly what is happening, what has happened on the low Earth orbit for the ISS, and what is going to happen for the Gateway and beyond. Another major role we expect the agency to play is booster new technology, because there are some technology which are not mature enough today, and of course it will be then up to the agency to make a best choice to develop them. Last but not least, we expect in this new environment the agency to be an anchor customer for all the private assets that we'll be able to manufacture. You made a question, will there be a demand for utilizing this kind of assets? Well, the ISS has proven that this is the case. When we started building the ISS, we were all concentrating on microgravity experiment, mainly driven by science, mainly driven by scientists, and we have seen how the demand is today. So what we can expect from this lunar exploration is, of course, the capability of experiment in terms of resource utilization. We expect also the moon to be a sort of test bench to develop technology for the exploration that will follow. I mean, planetary exploration, therefore Mars, asteroid, and beyond. I guess that there will be even more demand, and the presentation that was done before by iSpace demonstrates that today, already today, and we have not yet started, there is a real demand coming from institutions, but as well as from private.
Thank you, Enzo. Salem?
Yes, thank you. I agree with what Enzo mentioned as well. And I would say, just focusing on the role of new players in exploring the moon. So there, I think we see, I wouldn't call it a revolution, but I think, looking at companies like iSpace or commercial companies now that are able to successfully commercialize and, sell their services to entities, whether they're commercial or not, or governments such as us, we have a partnership with them. That showcases today that the moon is not just the domain of very large space agencies or very large groups of entities joining together to explore it. Also, our objective is to explore the moon in an extremely cost-effective way and as quick and simple as possible. So with our design, when looking at the rover, it's a relatively small rover with 5 or 6 different scientific experiments, but we emphasize 2 key points, which is to do it as cheap as possible and as cost-effective as possible, but also as simple and as quick as possible. And then being able to partner with entities such as iSpace, that wasn't something that was available 4 or 5 years ago. So I think today, that really makes access to the moon simpler, easier, and it gives countries such as the UAE or new entrants into moon exploration an easy pathway to say, okay, I'll develop my capabilities internally and then build up from there. So I think in the coming years, we'll see smaller countries who haven't previously explored the moon take that challenge on and do it effectively. I think that's what we'll see in the next decade. And I think from a commercial perspective, the last point on your question, definitely we see that interest. So today, if I give the UAE as an example, we have many scientific instruments on our moon rover, but when we're looking at our next rover, we see interest from commercial companies, from research entities in the UAE who are willing to pay to be part of that mission and to put their payloads on that mission. And then obviously us procuring services from a lander such as iSpace, I think that's a clear indicator of the commercial viability of companies working and exploring the moon. Thank you.
Thanks, Salem. Andreas?
Yeah, Salim, you mentioned revolution. I think what we might see in the next decades to come with Lunar utilization definitely is a kind of industrial revolution, establishment of a cislunar ecosystem, which is very different to the original exploration missions to the moon, which we have seen. And I think what you have mentioned for smaller countries is also true for industry. If existing infrastructure is demonstrating that there is the opportunity to fly every 18 months and every 24 months reliably, safely onto the lunar surface, you know that there is resource availability, there is habitation capacity, etc. It is much easier for those smaller countries and also companies to attract investors for business cases which are using the lunar environment, of course. And I think this is the role of the agency, to pave the way, to create an infrastructure, mainly institutional, partially probably also commercial. And the evolution will show, the more we see the commercial attractiveness of those activities, the more the agency, as an anchor customer, can only support what Enzo was saying, can then, let's say, step back more and more, giving the way for commercial enterprises, for commercial activities to provide and to develop further the necessary infrastructure in order to have a, let's say, sustainable, complete and growing ecosystem on the moon. And there might also be commercial interest to use the resources which are, let's say, exploited on the moon for near-Earth activities. So it's much easier to go to the geostationary orbit, as an example, from the moon, from the lunar surface, instead of doing it from the Earth. And this will also create a number of business cases which have more or less nothing to do with the moon itself, but which are using the moon as a platform, as a resource resort, and therefore ecosystem will grow, that's for sure.
Thank you, Andreas. So, Guy, you have the floor.
Thank you. So I've traveled to many different countries and spoken to many different agencies, and small agencies and big agencies have different goals. But I think the agency as an anchor customer is extremely important. But how the agency is a customer is very unique. And I will tell you about two different programs, which I think are the most successful programs. The first is NASA's program. NASA has a program called GLEX, the Commercial Lunar Payload Service. And this program is specifically focused on achieving science goals. So NASA will choose different instruments, and then they will provide these instruments to be bid on. And then it's a very, very fierce competition to see which lander company will send these instruments to the moon. So that's one way of doing things. The other way is, for example, the Canadian Space Agency. The Canadian Space Agency says to its Canadian industry, which business do you want to do? Which technology do you want to develop? And they will then choose the companies, and those companies get to choose which landers they fly on. So in our case, we were able to work with 3 different Canadian companies, each which have a unique business case. So these different programs both achieve one common goal. They allow for technology readiness level to be increased, and then they fund programs like iSpace or other competitors who are trying to pave the way for this lunar ecosystem. I can tell you we're a venture-backed company, and so of course all of our investors want to see that there is a market, so the anchor customer is very important from the government. But I can also tell you that from the commercial standpoint, we see more and more and more interest from outside of the space community, more specifically on in situ resource utilization. In the past year or two, I've seen more mining companies, and these are very large mining companies and also mid-tier mining companies who are interested in understanding more about lunar resources, how they can be used, but again, how can they be sold? What is the market? This story is not yet understood. However, I think as we go into the 2020s, as we have more information about the moon, we will see more and more business cases starting to close. And therefore, I agree with the previous comments that it will be a very exciting time for the moon. Thank you.
Thanks, Kyle. So, Sergey?
think that many things was already said, and I agree that probably the main customer will stay big agencies and government. And I think what we see with moon exploration, with moon utilization, is about the same what we saw in earlier stage of space exploration. When we have high risk, very low certainty, how much efforts, how much resources we need to achieve the goal. And goal is also not very clear. It's more like fundamental science. When you try to get new knowledge and you don't know how to turn this knowledge into money, then government is playing major role. Somewhere in between, when we grow some companies that are capable to do not just specific parts of vehicle or one single instrument, but also can do integrated missions. And when government is still looking for knowledge, not for market, but for knowledge, then government can be a customer. And then all commerce will go under the government request. So when people will build a vehicle and sell it basically to government to use it for knowledge gaining, not for selling, I don't know, soil, resources, but that's why in intermediate step, government will probably stay a major customer, but we will see more and more companies that fulfill what government requests. And maybe then third stage, when we have more or less developed market, when we have risk that can be estimated, when then commercial company will play a more significant role and business can be self-sustainable.
Thank you, Sergey. So back to Bremen, Lutz.
Yes. As Sergey said, many things have been said. For me, more. There was one more now in the meantime. So regarding your first question, on the one hand, we are learning a lot when developing our commercial service, ELSAS, which I mentioned already. But still, the role of space agencies is absolutely key for commercial providers, playing two main roles, as enabler and as anchor customer, as Enzo said earlier. As of today, we need the support by the agencies, but we definitely foresee a market which will develop over time. More missions will come, and infrastructure will develop on the lunar surface. Future crewed missions will arrive on the surface, and people on the moon will become a normality for us, even if only from next decade. Parallel to that, we have to develop access services that allow for companies to build a positive business case in going to the moon. Which brings me to your second question, where today the main demand comes from the scientific community. But the market is still in a super early stage. And as I said already, we expect it to grow. We expect it to grow significantly and fast once the capabilities are there. So we can imagine a snowball effect, which might open a wider demand and attract new types of users and of customers. And once the snowball has become an avalanche, there will be room for and interest by investors to build up commercial services on the surface. If it's product placement, if it's a lunar petrol station, if it's about commercial transportation, infrastructure, communication services to the moon, on the moon, and beyond. So we strongly believe there's a very, very significant role for the agencies now, but we strongly believe as well that the commercial market will take off very soon.
Thank you, Lutz. So perhaps we can come to specific questions to each of you. So I will keep the same order, just not to bother everyone. So Enzo, TAS is playing a major role in the upcoming Gateway and the L3 program. And Italy has been very supportive in the exploration domain. So commercially and institutionally, what do you think is the secret to be faster on the development of all the technologies needed to soft land on the moon, and how does TAS respond to the new space, let's call it like that, new space approaches applied to lunar exploration?
Okay, thanks for the question, Alain. The first easy question that comes to my mind is, okay, we have more than 30 years experience, we know how to do it, and we can do it. However, this has proven not to be the case, at least not anymore. Actually, we can say that in our experience, we were used in the past to a typical institutional customer, putting on the table a spec, putting on the table the constraints, financial schedule constraints, and we were used to produce what the customer wants. Actually, the turning point that we had in Alessia Space was when we started working on a commercial contract for the crew resupply service with Northrop Grumman, namely the Cygnus program, where things have completely changed our attitude to approach those kind of problems. What did we do and what are we doing today? First of all, we have established a quite strong and firm product policy, which is our product policy to make things faster and cheaper. And with that, we can serve a wider expected customer request. So we need to anticipate what customer request can be, knowing what's happening all around. The second is that we have upgraded our production facilities, our processes, our design tools, just to comply with a short-time request. And last but not least, we have established a very strong and motivated supply chain, which makes us flexible and competitive. One proof of what I'm saying has been just the fact that we've been selected for the Halo. There is one reason for which we've been selected, because we were potentially the only one that could comply with the schedule requirements. And that's why we've been selected. And this is thanks to the fact that now the way we are thinking to this, and this applies, of course, all surface operation and so on, is that we are anticipating what customer may require. Sometimes you succeed, sometimes you fail, that's life, fine enough, but so far this has proven to be successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Enzo. So Salem, the UAE is one of the newcomers in space exploration, and but you have started successfully, so congratulations for your HOPE mission. And you have big ambitions for the future. Why have you decided to send a rover to the moon now? And do you have any plans to apply commercial approaches for your future moon missions? Will commercial customers come on board on your rover, for instance?
Yes, thank you for the question. So in the UAE, we have a long-term strategy that we're looking at the exploration of Mars, and obviously looking at the global exploration roadmap and where, what are the easiest ways to test your technologies in exploring Mars. We see the moon as obviously the perfect place to do that. Not only is the moon exciting as it's in its own right as a destination, a challenge to get to, but also to study. But also it's closer, it's much easier to try to do things around the moon than, for example, to send a rover to Mars. So going to the moon for us is a dual goal of achieving scientific and technological objectives, as well as preparing for future missions to land on the surface of Mars and also explore Mars. So I think these two come hand to hand together with us. And again, the moon is very exciting. And for us to explore that, we as people from the region, the moon is something that is very important to us. We have a lunar calendar. It's something that is culturally significant to us. And exploring the moon is something that we really want to achieve. Looking at the commercial aspect in our future rover, so as I said, the first rover is mainly internal scientific objectives. We are cooperating with space agencies on different payloads, which we will announce in the coming period. So there is cooperation, but not from a commercial standpoint. However, in the next mission, we do see interest from commercial players, from startup companies in the UAE that we want to support and endorse on having our next rover and future rovers as platforms for startup companies, universities, commercial players to test their ideas, to implement their ideas, either on a commercial basis or as a space center or agency supporting local industry growing by testing their technology in and around the moon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Salem. So, Andreas, Airbus has certainly been at the forefront of exploration in Europe, taking now a major role in Orion, in the Gateway, in EL3. And at the same time, Airbus is also supporting new ventures and keeps an eye on commercialization aspects. So how Airbus sees this exploration commercialization trend, and how are you responding to that?
So we are at Airbus definitely counting on that exploration will become a real business. So Airbus is investing quite heavily in commercial business cases. We have just recently launched the first of a couple of Earth observation satellites where we are investing more than €500 million because we believe in the Earth observation services and data market. A second, more exploration-oriented business case, which we have established a couple of years ago and which is now operational, is our Bartolomeo platform, which we were attaching at the International Space Station. And I think the business logic is very nicely visible in this case, where we were developing and producing this Bartolomeo platform, which is providing an experimentation platform outside the International Space Station, that a lot of potential customers have shown a lot of hesitation because it was definitely a position of wait and see. So we want to see if everything works nicely, if the supply is properly working, etc., etc. This is now demonstrated since a couple of months, and since then, I think what we see is a very nice movement on the market, on the purely commercial customer side, that they are recognizing, okay, there is an opportunity, so supply is secured, transportation is secured, return is secured, so let's make our business case out of it, which is very promising. So when we come to the International Space Station at large, it is very much, and the rest of exploration business as well, governmentally driven. But we are assuming, and we are counting on that there will be more and more commercial business opportunities for us. So we are actively preparing for that. So we are developing critical technologies which might be key in order to provide competitive solutions for transportation, for logistics, for operations. As an example, fully autonomous operational systems for spacecraft and for facilities, or using of artificial intelligence for those systems in order to be fully autonomous. This is what we are developing in view of then getting institutions, agency as an anchor customer, but always having in mind there is a commercial background, there is a commercial business opportunity which we are definitely focusing on a long term. Thank you.
Thanks, Andreas. Kyle, iSpace can proudly say that you were one of the first purely commercial lunar exploration venture that has been presented to the world. And so how do you see since then the evolution until now? And is there stronger political support, or which factors are being key to ensure or speed up your success? Thank you.
Thanks for the question. So we actually were first created through the Google Lunar X Prize. For those of you that remember, this was a $20 million competition to be the first company to land on the moon. But unfortunately, after 10 years, no company was able to do it because it's still quite difficult, and no company has done that yet. However, since that time, in the past 5 to 6 years that I've been in this industry, we've received an incredible amount of support from institutions like the IAF, SGAC, International Space University, Moon Village Association. The amount of support that we've received from around the world has really been incredible and very touching. When we started, there was no programs for us in any of the governments. And now, as you can see, there are numerous programs that allow us to continue to develop. And the governments themselves have been extremely supportive. The American government passed a law to legalize space resource utilization. Soon after, the Luxembourg Space Agency followed with their own space resources law. And just yesterday, the Japanese government passed a law to legalize space resource utilization. So this is an incredible amount of support from the governments to enable our business to continue. This has just been amazing for me to witness. In the next few years, iSpace will continue to have more missions. In 2022, this is our first mission. We start relatively small because we want to have an early success. We will do another mission in 2023, and moving forward, we will have 1 to 2 missions every single year. So our intention is to continue to try to open up the lunar economy, and I just hope that we can continue to receive the support from everyone who supported us along the way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kai. So, Sergey, Roscosmos, as you mentioned earlier, has big plans for a permanent station on the surface of the moon. What are the main challenges ahead of you until it becomes fully operational? And do you envision also commercial operators using this station?
The main difficulties, as was said before, is technical challenges. And what previous speaker said, that although some things seems easy to, maybe not easy, but achievable a few years ago, finally we realized that it's not as easy to do. The Russian program is planning to have human base on the moon at a certain point. And if we are talking about human, we need to talk about reliability. And to make a complex system reliable, that's, I think, would be the main challenge. If you do robots, you can, of course, all this is a question of probability, but you don't need to make so many reservations in design, in production. It needs to be checked, but not as thorough as for human-rated vehicles. So I think for future exploration, I see the main challenge is to provide reliability of system with high complexity. But the next part of your question, what we see in the future and what is going to be next, I think I will just continue what I said before, that in first stage of exploration, probably government will play the main role, and at a certain point would be the main customer. But when we have risk estimated and when we have a market developed, then commercial company will come and will probably even compete for the market.
Okay, thank you, Sergey. So now I turn to Lutz. OHB is well known for its success in satellite domains, but is opening new lines of leadership in exploration as well, with key roles in EL3 and Gateway, as you mentioned, and both on system and payload. Also, your founder, Manfred Fuchs, was known to be a moon person. So you presented ELSAS in your first slide, a major step for Europe. What do you think is needed to make ELSAS a success?
Of course, as I said already, initially we will need some support by agencies as enabler, as early stage customers, but we see, as already said, we see significant commercial demand demand out of the scientific community already. ELSAS will offer a super early European sustainable presence on the surface of the moon, which is not foreseen in the current official space program in Europe, because EL3 will be 2030 plus. ELSA Space is on the Bereshit design and is therefore very cost efficient because it relies on a $100 million USD investment in Bereshit, which has happened already. We intend to fly every 2 to 3 years, bring new opportunities for the scientific community, for international corporations, for the industry to be able to flight-proof their systems and to moon-proof their systems, actually, for emerging space countries, for non-space customers, for commercial customers, and so on. So we are currently running a pilot phase for ESA, and our ELSAS-1 mission is planned to go to the lunar South Pole in the middle of this decade. So we are all very ambitious and very engaged in this program. There's really a spirit of let's go back to the moon. Happy about being one of the first Europeans on the moon. Thank you.
So just to try to keep the time, I have some questions which are directed to some of you. So I will let you know the questions. And then there are more general questions which can perhaps inspire your closing remarks. So what I propose, I will first give the dedicated questions so you can think about it, and then the others. So one question is for Sergey. Are there commercial companies developing lunar landers in Russia? And if yes, how Roscosmos plans to integrate them into its lunar program? Don't answer now. You will answer with your remarks. The other one is, sorry, for Salem. Is UAE open to partnering with China and Russia for the International Lunar Research Station? Now the two more general questions which can inspire your closing remarks. One is, I think we talked a little bit about it, but it seems that some people want to have more insight in it. Is space, and especially moon exploration, still a scientific exploration, or is it clearly a commercial one? And the second general question, and last, would you invest in moon crowdfunding program? Develop, explore commerce, public stakes, skin in the game. So, with that, closing remarks, and if you want to answer some of these questions, in particular for the dedicated one, I give the floor to Enzo.
Okay, I will answer to one of the general questions that try to make the difference between science and commercial. And I answer to this question with another question. Do we need to make a difference between science and commercial? The way I see, the answer is no. Actually, science is a sort of precursor of what commercial could be. So therefore, in a way, I see the business to develop. The two things just run in parallel. I mean, there is nothing strange in having payloads which are scientific payload paid by institution and commercial payload all together. I mean, business is business, and therefore it's the entire payload community that makes a business. And we shall not forget that when we're talking about purely commercial journey, then we have to have a business case that works. And I'm convinced that it's not going to work if we just make a difference between science and commercial.
Thank you, Enzo. Salem?
Yes, thank you. I'll say my closing remarks and then answer the question, because I think they're related. So, our belief is that international cooperation is a key fundamental fact of working in the space industry today, and the UAE is entirely committed to international cooperation and working with everybody to the benefit of the projects and obviously humankind. So to answer the question, definitely we are open to work with Russia, China, and everybody else on any type of program, including exploration of the moon. Thank you.
Thank you. Andreas?
Yeah, so coming to the conflict between scientific and commercial interest, I agree with Enzo that there might be a mixture. On the other side, experience in the history has shown when it comes to a competition between commercial and scientific interest, there have been not so many cases in which the scientific interest succeeded. Therefore, I think it will be a matter of capacity, it will be a matter of availability, of resources, of people, of time, where we will see, our expectation is there will be a strong push to industrialize, to commercialize the activities around Moon very much in order to support activities around Earth, going to Mars, using it for Moon activities, for lunar activities. There will also be science, but it will be mainly driven by commercial industrial activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Andreas. Kyle?
Thanks. So just building upon what the other people said, I don't think it's a competition between science and commercial. iSpace is positioned as a transportation provider. So from our perspective, if it's science, if it's commercial, if it's media, if it's crowdfunding, if it's anything that you can imagine, we want to enable that. That's our job. And we want to do it fast, and we want to do it in a cost-effective manner. That's what's going to really inspire the next business cases. So if Russia doesn't have a lunar program or a lunar lander, I don't know the answer, but we can help you. We're willing to work with anybody who wants to work with us. And we're looking forward to continuing to build bridges between the space sector, the non-space sector, and others who want to get more interested in the moon. Thank you.
Thank you, Kai. Sergei?
Answering your question about lunar landers, we have two big companies that used to work on interplanetary missions and work for human spaceflight, to provide human spaceflight capability. And that's a big company that used to be a governmental company. But question, do we have any commercial company working on it? One company is Lavashkin that provides many lunars already landed on the moon, and Energia, what is doing providing human space flights. And already for many years, and actually now probably for several decades, this is a commercial company. When you said even maybe you're not as familiar with Russian industry, but let's talk about US industry. Everyone said that SpaceX is a commercial company, but Boeing is also a commercial company. And it used to work for government for decades. And actually, if you look, if you talk about money, where money comes from, but for a commercial company like SpaceX, most of money comes from government anyway. So it's very big mixture. Probably the right question would be, do we have small company that recently was formed and are going to compete in the future market? That subject is just growing. We have some companies that are going to be in space business. They are small. Not everyone would be successful, but future will show. And for closing remark, what I would say, and I will agree with Salem, that talking about a complicated program, talking about reliability of this program that required for, especially for human space exploration. Of course, we see that international cooperation is very important for that. And we see as the space station, International Space Station, is a good example of it, because during this program we have difficulties on our side, on the US side, and because of international cooperation, we keep station habitated for more than 20 years already, and that's the way we are going to work in the future.
Thank you, Sergei. So, the last word for Lutz.
Yeah, I tried to be short because we are over time. So first message, exploration for me is clearly a topic for joint effort and international cooperation, no doubt about this. Secondly, I'm fully in line and could subscribe what Enzo has said, in particular regarding the precursor role of science, and as well when he said that science and commercial are not two antipodes, but at the end they will go together. Like Andrea said, likely over time commercial will prevail. And perhaps the last point is just a very general one. Human beings have been explorers since hundreds of years. Just the boundaries to overcome are changing. Once explorers, always explorers. Now it's the moon. Tomorrow it will be the Mars, with human beings on the Mars. So I think we just all need to keep our level of ambition. And at the end, it's not that important, as Kyle said, where the demand is coming from. The real important thing is that we together, we drive it forward, we overcome the boundaries, we overcome the barriers, and we make it happen.
Okay, thank you, Lutz, for this message of hope, and I want to thank all of the panelists for your your vision on how we should continue the exploration of the moon and further. And I also thank all the audience, remote or here, for the questions and for your attendance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alain. Thank you for moderating this outstanding panel, and thanks to the speakers, of course. We are now moving into a networking coffee break, and we will resume our program at 11 o'clock in 6 technical parallel sessions with technical presentations. And here in the Duma Hall, we will start our Global Networking Forum program, which will see a very interesting session on lessons learned from the ISS. So please try to be in time back some minutes before 11. Thank you.